This is Tim.
This is Ryan.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Ryan on a poor Skype connection, so bear with us. Skype is now telling me poor connection.
Skype isn't lying.
Yeah. All right, so we'll forge ahead here. We're talking about a comic called Honeymoon in the Afterlife by Matt Canning. And I asked you to join me for this episode without realizing that you had written a review of this book.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has, but I did.
I found one other besides yours, which I'll talk about a little bit later.
Okay, good.
So I was sent a PDF, and you mentioned in your review that there is a oversized kind of newsprint edition. It looks like a tabloid newspaper almost.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember who sent it to me. It might have been Mr. Canning himself. I don't know. I mean, I've got, a lot of people send me a lot of stuff, and I can't remember quite where, but it's a really nicely done, like broadsheet newspaper format. If any of your listeners have some familiarity with some of the things like Floating World is published, some of their Ben Mara things, or Sammy Harcum put out that Los Angeles Times newspaper thing last year that was essentially like a free version of Kramer's Ergot for the pandemic. And that was a similar format to this. And Canning uses 3 colors on it. He's got black and white, and then he's got sort of a peach tone for his spot color that comes more into play towards the end of the comic. And I don't know, I assume that showed up in the PDF as well.
Yes.
I didn't open the PDF, but it looks really nice on the newsprint. The black and white is, that's always just fine. But this peach sort of, what's the word I'm looking for here, Tim? It's like, I don't know how to describe the color, but it's like a peach, like a rose, dusty rose kind of thing.
Yeah.
Prairie Rose. Apologies to Roxy Music, right? But it looks pretty good.
I saw on the Birdcage Bottom Books website that there's also a risograph edition that's smaller.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to check that out. Okay, so JT's got, maybe that's where I got this newsprint one. I wish I could remember. So you're saying JT has those in stock at Birdcage Bottom?
Yeah, there are photos of both versions there, the newsprint and the risograph.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to check that out then too, because this would be worth having in that format. I think I'm a big Riso fan in general, but I think this would look really good. That third color would look really sharp that way. So anyway,
before I describe the book, I want to say I read your review, and I don't think we have the same interpretation of what this book is.
Okay.
You took the title at face value.
It wouldn't be the first time I got it totally wrong.
Apparently you assumed that the ghostly-looking characters in this book, they all look the same, that they were, in fact, dead people who are in the afterlife. But we see them kind of moving through stages of life, going to school and getting married and working and having friends over for dinner and being hospitalized. And then at the end, they all apparently die. So it seems more like it's some kind of weird representation of moving through life. Despite the title, there's no honeymoon in the book, and I'm not sure there's any afterlife either.
Okay. Well, that's a totally valid way to look at it, but I'm going to stick with mine, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because this would not be the first time that the afterlife was essentially portrayed as a humdrum type of existence after our own existence. If you'll recall, like Warren Beatty's Heaven Can Wait, wasn't heaven just like a giant bureaucracy with people working at desks and all that kind of thing?
Oh, that does sound familiar. I never actually saw it, but once I read like a photo book, like a photo comic version of it, and I think that's right.
Yeah, and I recall too, this is going back, but Walt Simonson's run on Fantastic Four, not Thor, but his FF run afterwards, I believe in a series of issues Art Adams drew. I forget the premise, but somehow the Fantastic Four ended up in heaven, and it was a kind of a dull work-a-day existence there with bureaucrats and 9-to-5 clock punching and all that to do as well. So I think that at the end of this, yeah, he's graduating on to whatever the next afterlife after this one is. But I could be completely wrong about that. The nice thing about a wordless comic like this that doesn't hit you over the head is that, obviously it is open to your own interpretations and your own thoughts about what's going on. Mm-hmm. I prefer stories where the reader does some of the work and there aren't necessarily right or wrong ways to look at it.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a good point that I want. This is a good time to quote from the other review I found, which was by Will Vigar on in-common.co.uk. He wrote, "The narrative may be a fever dream. It might be the point-of-death recap of one's life. You're never quite certain. That is what makes it such an engaging read. It is open-ended enough for your interpretation to be all that matters, and it's incredibly refreshing that you are never drowned in smug exposition."
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really open to interpretation.
I have absolutely no... that's a very well-stated summation there. Hell, wish I'd thought of it to write that myself.
At the beginning, we've got one of these ghostly characters coming down a roller coaster, going into this black hole, and then apparently it ends up leaving him at a train station, and he takes this moving sidewalk in to... It looked like he's receiving his name. There are these like undecipherable characters that... like letters, but not any letters we've ever seen, that are the only sort of language in this book. But we just have to figure out what it is, because it's certainly not English. But yeah, that sort of upside down J character seems to be his name, and so he's handed this little physical, like plastic character, and then you see him being called by that name later on.
Right. Now, I need to open mine here quickly because I forgot, but I think you may have missed one point that comes into play at the end as well. Yeah, here we go. There is a whole page of sort of what resembles television white noise. Mm-hmm. After he falls down into that hole on his little roller coaster car.
Oh, right. All this kind of static.
Hole.
Yeah.
Yep, like a white noise, static, whatever you want to call it. And if I'm remembering correctly, sorry, listeners who don't like spoilers, but at the end, when he dies, appears to just die again, I thought, he does the same thing, and we're left with a splash page of all white noise static, only without his little inset panel into it. So let me... Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, my brain's doing okay today.
Yeah, so and I can think of several different ways to interpret that ending, but when they're on that moving sidewalk, they're moving toward a building that has this big upside down triangle on it, and triangles upside down and right side up seem to have some symbolism in here. Later on, you see the town has this oddly perfectly triangular mountain. That's what I took it to be anyway. But yeah, I don't know what that triangle is supposed to symbolize, but it seems like it has some kind of significance.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what it is either, but you're right. It's a recurring motif. And a lot of times an artist will just pick a symbol that they like or that they feel resonates with the work they're putting together, and something that just makes them say to themselves, yeah, this works. And they don't necessarily even think through why, or there's no concrete, defined narrative purpose to it other than creative indulgence, for lack of a better way of putting it. And that's okay. I mean, I certainly don't mind a comic where the cartoonist is just following their own muse and just doing what feels like an honest piece of, in this case, world building. I mean, I would call this as detailed a piece of world building as you'll see in any mainstream comic, really.
Yeah.
It's just done entirely differently, but he's thought through whether it's real or after death. He's thought through this society pretty top to bottom, to the point where some of these jobs are like that almost garbage man type of guy at the end who just goes around the street collecting bodies and stuff.
Well, he's pulling something out of the bodies that looks kind of like a 1980s Atari game cartridge. I took that maybe to be their souls.
And then he's also taking... Hold on, I got to flip ahead because I seem to remember he's taking their faces off, which are just masks.
Well, yeah, there are some characters running around with these masks on, and I wanted to talk about the masks too, but yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I think that's not a bad, like, it's almost like a downloadable soul or whatever term a person wants to use that we all have that's stored in basically a cartridge that pulls out of a slot in the head.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there it is too, the triangular mountain again, which if we flip back a little bit here, sorry people, flip back a few pages, you see a lot of that triangular mountain when he's in the hospital. And then, so the people, or the ghosts rather, in the masks, that is an interesting thing. What do you think that's all about?
Well, hang on a second. The souls, I just put something together here. So earlier on, we see, I guess he's our protagonist, that when he has a job in a factory and he's cutting out the character that is his name out of these kind of square discs, which I took maybe meaning like he's kind of, this is his legacy, this is what he's leaving behind, this is the work that he's doing that will outlive him. He's like cutting out his own name from these blocks. But then when that guy collects those blocks, he takes them into the big triangle, and it's that factory that the guy was working in earlier. And he was cutting out of those same kind of soul discs, he was cutting his name out.
Yeah.
Because it's that same machine that he was using.
That's, yeah. Wow, that's...
We're both
that's a real... I mean, that's absolutely accurate. And I'm not quite sure exactly what... I'm not sure what it symbolizes beyond some sort of recurrence of everything,
Yeah, well, there's definitely there's cycles in this story, as we see at the end when somebody else is on a roller coaster.
Right, and goes into that staticky thing I'd mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the collector at the end seemed to be made out of that staticky substance.
Yeah, he's not white like all the others. He's
right.
Kind of not a solid black, but yeah, sort of the same as the static design.
And that is what the soul disc things, for lack of a better term, are all constructed of as well.
And the
so
triangle.
Is that like the universal?
The triangle
right.
too.
Is that like the universal building material? Is that the cosmic life force? Is that the Kirby crackle of this little world that Canning has built? It's a really good question.
Seem to be.
And I don't know if this shows up on the PDF, but in the part between where the protagonist dies or re-dies, however you care to look at it, and we go to it falls through the hood of that car, and then we go to, and bounces through the roof onto the ground through the hood of a car, and then the next thing we see is that sort of subway or train waiting station again. In the newsprint version, there is a completely blank page between those two things.
Yep. Yeah, there's a totally blank page.
Okay, that shows up in a PDF too? Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very intentional, looks like.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting. So, yeah, again, I think that, and the other critic made note of this as well, that this is very much a interpretive piece. And I read a lot of comics that are in that vein that have no right or wrong way to look at them, which I think is certainly can be frustrating to people who are more used to a linear narrative, and I would call this one more circular. I mean, definitely we're in a different spot at the end of the story than we were at the beginning, but it's strongly hinted that the same thing is starting all over again for this other ghost. So,
or we can't even really tell if it's another ghost or the same ghost because they all look the same.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yep. And in fact, actually, now that I think about it, when I first read it, my impression is that it was the same dude dying all over again. So, yeah.
Like reincarnation?
Yeah, or just not even like maybe moving up to the next level above this, maybe this is the heaven suburb. Then he's going to moving inward, in the ring a little more, and only to find it'll be the same thing there too, and then graduate up again and find the same thing there.
But there's sort of a weeding out here because a lot of the ghosts are kind of like the Rapture. They're all pulled up into the sky, and others are not, and a lot of them seem to commit suicide.
Well, here's the thing. I see where you're coming from with that, but I took it as if they're dead anyway, and maybe that's not such a, like the Rapture, that whole notion I take rather seriously, not as I think it's going to happen, but because I think that's genocidal ideation writ large. I mean, anyone who believes in that basically believes that anyone who isn't a particular type of saved Christian is going to get killed, and they're looking forward to the day when it happens. I mean, that's just, that's some sick thinking right there. But yeah, there was like an ascent upwards towards the end of this comic. I should flip ahead here. Yeah, there we go. An ascent upwards.
Yeah, they all gather into this big ball.
Yep.
And actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think some of the other people don't commit suicide. I think maybe they got pulled up to the ball and then fell. Because you see the guy like plummeting down and hitting.
I think so too, because there's falling bodies.
Yeah, hitting the roof and bouncing.
Yeah. Yep, this is not. That's kind of deviates from the Rapture, and then that static ghost creature at the end is like a one-man or one ghost cleanup crew, and they just kind of fell. But yeah, I didn't get the same sense that like Rapture believers do, where they're like, it's gonna take us all up to heaven, and then the other 99.9% of you are gonna be left to die. It's more like it was just like everybody was going, like almost like a factory whistle or a factory bell, and then it closed up and a bunch of them fell back down. And then, yeah, we had that strange instance with the mask again, so
right,
maybe
we should get to the mask. Yeah, so the first time we see the mask, there's a rock band, and I guess the guitarist is our protagonist.
That's right. Yep,
and so
basement band. Yep.
Yeah, so he's playing with a couple other guys, and the lead singer is wearing this mask. It looks like a much more human mask with like little freckles on above the nose. And so after they finish their, I don't know, finish their set, maybe the lead singer with the mask on punches the guitarist. And leaves him with a black eye. We see a couple pages later when he looks in the mirror. And then later, this person with a mask on shows up on the cover of a magazine that the protagonist is reading on the toilet. And then later, like I think around the time that this, just before the sort of rapture type scene. So the protagonist is in the hospital and he's watching TV, and like everybody on TV is wearing these masks, except for the anchorman on the news, but is showing like a huge gathering of people. I don't know if it's a rock concert. They're all wearing masks, and somebody's taking a selfie with somebody else, and they're both wearing masks. I don't know. At first, I thought that the mask symbolized fame. But then, I don't know, it might not be as simple as that, but it seems to, maybe it's talking about hiding something about ourselves.
Or could it be a status symbol?
Okay. Yeah.
I wondered if maybe, like the singer had it, but then like the other guys in the band don't. You look on television, and the celebrities and news presenters and everyone does, but you don't see a lot of them out there on the street. I don't know. I kind of read a kind of a class status symbol into it.
Maybe. Although, like I said, the anchorman does not have a mask on.
Okay, I forgot that part.
Yeah, so you can see, over his shoulder, they're showing a picture of a guy with a mask on, but the reporter does not have one. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to think about in this book.
Oh yeah, it's very dense, and he manages to do all that without a single word of dialogue.
Yeah, other than a few in a language we can't understand.
But conceptually and thematically, it's a very dense work that leaves you with a lot to consider.
Yeah, I mean, you have to read it again and again, I think, to sort of start to dig into it and figure out what it means.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I hope that this is something that some other publishers and things have paid some attention to, because I would think that if this is the kind of work that Canning does, and this is my first time seeing his stuff at all, was this comic. If this is the kind of thing that he does, if this is his modus operandi, I think that he could really, I think some strips by him and some of the better anthologies and things like that would be really welcome.
Yeah, for sure.
Or give him a solo, Fantagraphics, if you're listening. Maybe give him a strip in now, and at the very least, and maybe let him see if he gives you a submission for a short book or a graphic novel, because this is a lot of really heavy conceptual stuff that he really does a great job making it seem breezy and quick. Like when you read this thing 3 times through the first time, it'll only take you 15 minutes, and they're very enjoyable. But it leaves you with a lot to think about and no easy or quick answers. And yet they're not frustrating things to puzzle over or ponder. You're not like pounding your table and demanding immediate resolution. You realize that coming to your own conclusions about certain things in a way that makes sense to you individually is part of the fun.
Yeah, I think Fantagraphics would be a good fit for him. I mean, I can't see him doing an image series. That would not reach the right audience.
That's not at all. But I mean, yeah, I could really see him. I hope he's like submitted something to Reynolds for now, or for any anthology of that nature. And then
or
Fantagraphics would be a great publishing home for them. Or the Fantagraphics Underground imprint, their little micro press that does like books of 500 print copies or so. That might be, they're doing some of the more interesting stuff in the Fantagraphics line these days. That would be a good fit for his type of work.
Yeah, I can see Avery Hill picking up something like this too, and they're in the UK where he is, so that might be something to try.
A couple of their releases every year are a little bit more on the experimental side. They put it through a lot of things that are very much straight narrative, and that's fine too. I mean, I got no beef with that kind of comic. But it seems like there's a couple of slots every year in Avery Hill's schedule for something a little more on the really experimental side, that they're willing to roll the dice on maybe not being the world's biggest seller or something. And this would fit there. Or somebody like Secret Acres, I could see being interested in something like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, Avery Hill, that's a good call.
But yeah, I definitely hope we can see more from Matt Canning in one form or another.
Yeah, if he kind of rolls with this same kind of set of artistic concerns, but refines things just a bit, I think he could have a really interesting career in front of him.
Yeah.
What did you think of the art? Because I know that it doesn't fit anyone's definition. It's what you could fairly call minimalist in terms of his figure drawings, but you can tell that he spent a lot of time on it. I mean, there were no shortcuts. There were no shortcuts taken here, and that staticky substance we've mentioned a million times is a fairly labor-intensive thing to get looking right.
Yeah, well, I think just like the writing, the art is deceptively simple. There's a lot of thought going into it that, at first glance you might think it's just, one step up from kids' drawings, but it's all done very intentionally and yeah, it's very good, even though it's rather simple.
Yep. People have said that for years about things like John Porcellino or something, but then you'll see him do like a really detailed drawing that will show you that, yes, he really can, when that is what he's doing, he can bring it with artistic chops to match the best of them. But the King Cat thing is an intentionally naive and simplistic style. So yeah, this is I'll tell you what, man, I'll be real honest with you. I can't remember what I wrote in my review, but this comic impressed the hell out of me.
Yeah, well, it's impressing me more and more the more I look at it.
Yeah. So I hope you'll get a paper copy of it or that Rizzo printed copy. In fact, I'm going to order that here from Birdcage yet tonight. Because that would be something I'd really like to have.
Okay, very good. So, thanks for listening. If you'd like us to critique your comics, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll talk about it on the show. So thanks for listening, and thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.